The word that keeps coming up when you go back through every interview, every retrospective, every carefully worded statement the cast of Dexter gave between 2010 and 2016 is professional. They describe Michael C. Hall as a professional. They say the set was professional. They say whatever was happening personally was handled professionally. And the more times you hear that word from the same group of people, the more you start to understand what it is actually replacing. Because professional is the word people use when the real word is unavailable. And I am not saying that the way people say it to get clicks. I am saying it because the documented record, the court filings, the publicist statements, the on-record interviews across outlets including Vulture, Entertainment Weekly, The Hollywood Reporter, and The Guardian tells a story that has never been assembled in one place until right now. So let me do that. Let me put every piece of it together. And trust me, by the time we get to what Jennifer Carpenter said publicly about performing love scenes for a character played by the man she had just divorced, while legally bound to the same production as him, you are going to want to go back and watch every single scene between Dexter and Deborah Morgan with completely different eyes. Let me start from the very beginning, because if you do not understand what Dexter actually was at its peak, you are not going to understand the scale of what collapsed around it. Dexter premiered on Showtime on October 1st, 2006. By the time Season 4 concluded in December 2009, the show had become the most watched original series in Showtime's history. The Season 4 finale drew 2.6 million viewers, which Showtime confirmed in a press release as a record for original programming on the network at that time. The show won a Golden Globe for Best Drama Series in 2008. It produced a performance from John Lithgow as the Trinity Killer that won Lithgow the Primetime Emmy Award for Outstanding Supporting Actor in a Drama Series at the 62nd Emmy Awards in August 2010. It turned Michael C. Hall into one of the most recognizable faces in American cable television, and Hall knew what he was. He knew the value of what he controlled. And the way he chose to use that value is the thing his castmates have been quietly describing, in careful, precise language, in interviews across a decade, without ever quite saying it directly. Let me tell you what they were actually saying. Before any of the personal wreckage, before the divorce, or the diagnosis, or the panned finale, there was a baseline dynamic on that set that shaped everything which followed. Michael C. Hall is a classically trained theater actor. He attended New York University's Tisch School of the Arts. He came to Dexter directly from a Tony Award-nominated run in the Broadway revival of Cabaret in 2003 and years of stage work before that. He treated the role of Dexter Morgan with a level of interior architectural precision that was, by all accounts, extraordinary. It was also, by those same accounts, something that did not leave much room for the people around him. James Remar, who played Harry Morgan across all 8 seasons of the show, gave an interview to Den of Geek in 2013 in which he described working with Hall in terms that stuck out to anyone paying attention. He said Hall operated inside a particular kind of internal focus. He said you could never entirely locate where the character ended and the man began. He framed this as a professional observation, not a personal complaint, but the framing itself tells you something. After 8 years of working alongside someone, if the thing you choose to highlight is how difficult they are to locate as a separate human being, the absence of warmth in that description is louder than anything the description actually contains. David Zayas, who played Angel Batista from the pilot episode through the finale, was more direct in interviews he gave to Entertainment Weekly and other outlets in 2013 following the show's conclusion. He said the later seasons felt disconnected from what had made the show work in its peak years. He said the set in the final years was a different place than the set he had walked onto in 2006. He chose his words carefully, attributing the change to the story rather than to any individual. But the timeline he was describing corresponds precisely to a period of specific, documented personal and professional upheaval centered on the show's lead. Let me tell you what that upheaval actually was, because most people know the broad outline. Almost nobody has looked at the specific sequence of events and understood what it meant for the people working around it every single day. On January 13, 2010, Hall's publicist confirmed to the press that Hall had been diagnosed with Hodgkin's lymphoma. The statement, reported by People magazine and confirmed across every major entertainment outlet the same day, said that Hall had undergone treatment and was in remission. What the statement also revealed, without being explicit about it, was the full shape of what had happened. Hall had been diagnosed during production of Season 4. He had filmed the entire season while managing the diagnosis and beginning treatment. He had not informed the public. He had begun chemotherapy the day after production wrapped. He stood on a stage at the 67th Golden Globe Awards on January 17, 2010, accepted the award for Best Actor in a Drama Series while wearing a knit cap. And the cast of his own show found out he had been sick the same way the rest of the world did, from a press release. Let me tell you why that detail matters more than it might initially appear. This was not a small production. These were not strangers. The cast and crew of Dexter had been working together in close, emotionally demanding circumstances for 4 consecutive seasons. They had been filming scenes that required genuine vulnerability, genuine trust, genuine professional intimacy. And the man at the center of that production had managed a cancer diagnosis and a chemotherapy regimen and a treatment process in a compartment so sealed that the people sitting next to him in makeup chairs every morning did not know it was happening. That is a particular kind of distance. It is not cruelty, but it is a very specific and very deliberate form of absence. And the people who found out from a press release carried the knowledge of that absence into every subsequent season of production. But wait, there is more. Because what happened next made the cancer disclosure look simple by comparison. Michael C. Hall and Jennifer Carpenter had married on December 31, 2008, in Big Sur, California. Carpenter played Deborah Morgan, Dexter's adoptive sister, and the character who functioned as the moral and emotional spine of the entire series. Every time the audience was asked to believe that Dexter Morgan had something human inside him, worth caring about, it was through his relationship with Deborah that the show made that case. They appeared publicly as a couple for the first time at the 66th Golden Globe Awards in January 2009. They separated in August 2010, less than 2 years later. Carpenter filed for divorce in Los Angeles Superior Court in December 2010. The divorce was finalized on December 2, 2011, according to court records and confirmed reporting by People magazine and Entertainment Weekly. Now here's the production timeline you need to hold in your head alongside those dates. Dexter ran for 8 seasons. The 8th and final season concluded on September 22, 2013, which means that for seasons 6, 7, and 8, covering 3 full years of production, Jennifer Carpenter and Michael C. Hall came to work on the same set, in the same building, on the same production, and played characters whose relationship was the emotional engine of the entire show. They delivered scenes of grief, loyalty, fury, and love between Deborah and Dexter Morgan. And then they went home separately. Carpenter spoke about this period in a 2013 interview with Vulture. She described those final seasons as the hardest period of her professional life. She said she was proud of the work. Both of those things are documented. Both of them are true, and they are not the same thing as saying it was fine. Because here is the part that transforms the professional difficulty into something considerably more specific. And this is the part almost nobody is talking about. In Season 7, the writers introduced a storyline in which Deborah Morgan develops romantic feelings for Dexter. Feelings that, within the fictional reality of the show, extended beyond familial love into something the narrative asked the audience to take seriously. This storyline aired in 2012. Carpenter spoke about it before the season aired in an interview with Entertainment Weekly, saying the story direction had required significant personal processing and that she had needed to find a way to approach the material that she could live with professionally. Read that again. Jennifer Carpenter, while navigating the documented legal finalization of her divorce from her co-star, was simultaneously being asked by the production to perform romantic feelings for the character that co-star was playing. She showed up. She did the work. She gave the interview, and she described it with the kind of precise, careful language that tells you the real version of what she experienced was considerably more complicated than what she was putting on record. And then there is the power structure, because this is the element that changes the entire dynamic, and almost nobody has examined it directly. Beginning in the show's later seasons, Hall took on an executive producer credit on Dexter. This is confirmed in the production credits of the series, reported by Variety and The Hollywood Reporter. He had creative input that extended substantially beyond performance. He was not simply a colleague navigating a personal situation with another colleague. He was, in a meaningful structural sense, one of the people who made creative decisions about what stories were told, which characters were served by the narrative, and what the show ultimately became. Consider what that means for Jennifer Carpenter, for C.S. Lee, who played Vince Masuka, for David Zayas, for every performer on that set who was simultaneously working alongside someone with whom they had complicated professional and personal history, and working for someone whose position in the production's authority structure meant that their story, their character's arc, their professional future on the show was partially determined by decisions that man was involved in making. That is not a neutral environment. That is an environment with a specific and consequential imbalance built into its architecture. C.S. Lee, speaking to The Wrap in 2013 in a retrospective interview about the show's run, described Hall with what can only be called careful professional respect. He highlighted Hall's commitment and his focus. He spoke about what it was like to work on a show anchored by a performance of that sustained intensity. What he did not speak about was warmth. What he did not speak about was friendship. What he described was proximity to something remarkable, in the way that you can be in proximity to something remarkable without ever fully being part of it. And John Lithgow, who won the Emmy for his portrayal of the Trinity Killer in Season 4, has been the most unreservedly positive member of the extended cast in the public record. In interviews with multiple outlets, including the New York Times and Entertainment Weekly, Lithgow described working with Hall as one of the most extraordinary acting experiences of his career. He used that word, extraordinary, more than once. But here is what you need to hold alongside Lithgow's account. Lithgow was on the show for a single season. He came in during Season 4, which the critical record universally identifies as the creative peak of the entire run. He worked with Hall during the period before the cancer disclosure, before the divorce, before the executive producer credit, before the weight of everything that accumulated across those final years. He experienced something real, and he reported it honestly. He also experienced a fundamentally different version of that production than the people who stayed for all 8 years. The people who stayed for all 8 years have told a more complicated story. Now here is the moment that will absolutely change how you think about the finale. The Dexter series finale aired on September 22, 2013. The critical response was immediate and overwhelming. The AV Club gave the finale a grade of F, a rating the publication uses rarely enough that its deployment communicated something beyond simple disappointment. Richard Lawson, writing for The Atlantic following the broadcast, described the finale as undoing the credibility of everything the show had built across its run. IGN scored the final season as a whole at 5.5 out of 10. The discourse was enormous. It lasted for months. It became one of the defining examples of a beloved show failing to land its conclusion, a conversation that would not fully fade until Game of Thrones provided a new and even larger example 5 years later. And here is how Michael C. Hall handled it. He gave measured, careful, diplomatic interviews. He said he understood why viewers felt the way they felt. He said he was proud of the 8-year body of work. He was contained and gracious, and he committed to nothing specific about what he personally thought of the ending. He held the line with the precision of a man who has spent 8 years playing a character who survives entirely through the management of information. And here is how Jennifer Carpenter handled it. Speaking to Digital Spy in late 2013, she said that learning Deborah Morgan would die in the finale was something she had needed time to process. She said she had not entirely agreed with all of the creative choices in the final season. These were not hostile statements, but they were also not diplomatic in the specific, sealed way that Hall was diplomatic. She was saying on the record that she had disagreed. Hall never said that, not once. not publicly, about anything associated with that production. The divergence between how Hall spoke about the show and how the surrounding cast spoke about the show is the most consistent signal in the entire documented record. The closer someone was to Hall's inner circle, the more their public statements resembled his. The more distance there was, professionally or personally, the more candid the account became. And let me tell you what that divergence eventually produced. Because the final piece of this story is also the most revealing one, and almost nobody has framed it this way. Dexter. New. Blood premiered on Showtime on November 7th, 2021. Showtime confirmed in press releases from late 2021 and early 2022 that the 10-episode limited series averaged more than 8 million weekly viewers across all platforms, making it the most watched series in Showtime history. Clyde Phillips, who had served as showrunner during the first 4 seasons of the original run, returned to oversee New Blood from development through the finale. The critical reception was significantly warmer than the original finale had been. Variety called it a return to form. The Hollywood Reporter described it as confident and purposeful. David Zayas was not in it. C.S. Lee was not in it. James Remar was not in it in any meaningful capacity. Jennifer Carpenter appeared in New Blood only as a hallucination, a ghost of guilt playing inside Dexter Morgan's head, not as a colleague, not as a co-star, as a manifestation of something the main character had done and could not undo. And here is what you need to understand about that creative choice. In a production anchored entirely around Michael C. Hall's return to a character he had been associated with for 15 years, surrounded by an entirely fresh, supporting cast built from scratch around that center. The one figure from the original ensemble who appeared at all appeared as a voice inside his head that he was trying to silence. Whatever the creative reasoning behind that decision, whatever the production logistics or contractual realities that shaped it, the image itself is almost too precise. She is not there as a person. She is there as something he carries. Carpenter, for her part, gave no interviews expressing disappointment about the shape of her participation in New Blood. She said what she said. She showed up for what the production asked her for, and she moved forward. That is the through line in her entire documented story. From 2010 onward, she showed up for the divorce, for the romantic storyline, for the finale she partially disagreed with, for the hallucination. She showed up for every single thing this production asked of her while navigating circumstances that most performers would have found professionally and personally untenable. And she did it with a composure that, in a just world, would be discussed as frequently as Hall's own composure is discussed. But it is Hall's composure that defines the narrative. It always has been. That is the architecture of how the show worked, and how the story of the show has been told afterward. One center of gravity, everything else in orbit. Dexter Morgan spent 8 seasons talking about the code, a set of internal principles that governed every decision, every interaction, every carefully managed impression he allowed other people to have of him. A system designed to let him operate in the world on his own terms, while keeping the real version of what was happening underneath the surface where no one else could see it. The cast of Dexter has been describing in careful fragments across a decade of retrospective interviews what it is like to spend years working in close proximity to someone else's code when you are not part of the logic that built it, when you find out about the cancer from a press release, when you continue performing love and loyalty and family alongside a man you are legally divorcing, when the character you spent 8 years building appears in the revival as a hallucination he is working to suppress. They did not hate Michael C. Hall. The documented record does not quite reach that word, though it leans in that direction in ways that become clearer the more carefully you read it. What the documented record shows is something more specific and more lasting than hate. It shows a group of disciplined professionals who spent years adapting themselves to a gravitational center that acknowledged their presence without ever fully letting them in, who delivered work of genuine quality under circumstances of genuine difficulty, who chose their words in retrospective interviews with the precision of people who understood exactly how much the real account diverged from the official one, and who, when the revival came and the story was finished and the door was finally closed, found out that the ending had been written without them. That is the whole story, not the comfortable version where everything was professional and everyone went home happy. The real version, the documented one, where professional is the word that stands in for something the camera never quite caught and the interviews never quite named. Sometimes the most revealing thing is not what people say. It is the very specific shape of what they leave out.